Index investing is a passive investment strategy that seeks to replicate the returns of a benchmark index in the market. It offers greater diversification as well as lower expenses and fees than actively managed strategies. In the non-interest finance market, we have seen the emergence of several indexes globally to boost activities in this market segment. Good morning, welcome to another edition of Islamic Finance Weekly, where we bring you perspective and analysis on how the non-interest finance market can serve as a veritable tool for growth and economic development. This episode of the program will focus on investing through Islamic finance products and index from a presentation by Mr. Ndako Mijindadi, Head Investment and Research, Lotus Capital Limited. Providing insights on products to engage within the market as an ethical investor, Ndako Mijindadi said, ethical or Shariah-compliant investors have access to a wide variety of investable assets. Some of the interesting segments to look into are real estate or commodities. Watch the video.
I think it's important to mention that as much as we say non-interest finance, as much as we use some terminologies when we're speaking about non-interest finance, such as the likes of Ijara, Musharaka, Mudaraba, and their likes, it's important to understand that these instruments or these contracts or this Islamic finance futures will come to you as an investor in the form of traditional assets. So what you'll be looking at as an investor is to see an equity that has been screened, or to see a bond that is compliant with Islamic finance principles, or to see commodities like Punta mentioned, and things like this. So these are the kind of assets that you're going to see. You're not going to go to market and just see something strange. It will be things that you're familiar with. There will be a certain level of due diligence that you will need to go through to ascertain that you can participate in these type of investments. Now, one central point that I think is also important to share is that as ethical investors, as non-interest or Islamic investors, we follow a particular maxim, which is to say that everything is permissible unless we can establish that it is not permissible. Now, what that means is if you enter into the market, you'll have access to a wide variety of investable assets. Unless it can be proven that those things are not permissible to you, you can engage with them. And one thing to look at is, for instance, real estate or even commodities. By their very nature, some of these things, are compliant, unless, it can be proving otherwise. So for us at Lotus Capital, we try and make sure that we can present or assist the market in developing in a way that the investor has access to a broad range of assets that can allow them, express their traditional investment perspectives.
Exploring key considerations for investing, he explained that Sharia compliance is the cornerstone of investing. It is non-negotiable. Also, it is important to know market-based instruments as it deals with regulation.
We like to think of Sharia compliance as the cornerstone for investing, and this can be any other consideration for people who have other considerations. So it can be something broader like ethical finance, it can be something like ESG, impact investing, but then whatever is your unique circumstance, you should consider that, when engaging with products in the market. However, this is not the only consideration that we have in investing. And I think it's also important to mention in this forum, assuming, we're all speaking to investors, as the other things that we should also look at in addition to Sharia compliance when we're engaging with instruments. For market-based instruments, it's important to note that many of these instruments are likely to be regulated. So you want to be comfortable that either the institution that you're dealing with or the instruments that you're investing in have the regular or required regulatory oversight, and they're investable for you. Other things such as returns should be critical. We've given examples of just the kind of returns that are possible with non-interest investing. You should be comfortable that those returns, are also good for you when you're engaging with non-interest products. You should also, I'm very happy that Punto spoke to this, you should also be comfortable with the risk profile of the investment. And the risk profile is in different, it can be in form of volatility in realizing your returns. It can be in form of share compliance. to be sure that when you invest in an asset or invest in any product or through any marketplace, whatever you're invested in remains compliant.
Speaking on ways to encourage in the equities market as an Islamic investor, the Islamic finance expert said the investor needs to follow the particular methodology and ensure the company is not involved in the areas that are not permissible in the non-interest finance principles.
One way of engaging with equities as an Islamic investor or as a non-interest investor is to determine how exactly you want to go about doing this. To have some time to go through the instruments that are in the market and begin to identify those that are compliant, or would you want somebody to do this for you and just point you in the right direction? Okay, and even if that person points you in the right direction, would you want continuous guidance on things that are compliant, or would you want to be able to do the due diligence on a case-by-case basis on your own? Now, we call this a disparity between active investing and passive investing. At Lotus, what we've done is to try and make sure we have products that are useful for investors, regardless of how they want to interact with the market, or regardless of how they want to interact with equity investment. Now, if you wanted to interact with equity investment from the point of view where you're an active investor, all you need to do is follow a particular methodology in identifying those assets. Now, there are two levels. One is to make sure that the company is not involved in any way in areas that are deemed to be not permissible with non-interest finance principles. Such areas we've already spoken about, things like alcohol, or water, interest, conventional insurance, and whatnot. You get this out of the way, and then you look at what's left in the basket of investable assets, equities, that is, that you can invest in. Then secondly, you need to now look through the companies one by one, making sure that their financial performance or rather their finances are managed in a way that is convenient for a non-interest investor to invest in, or permissible for a non-interest investor to invest in. And that's what we call our quantitative screening.
Looking at the Sukuk investment fixed income, it stated that a lot of broad investors are attracted to Sukuk market due to its ability of diversification. Particularly, retail investors like Sukuk because of its social impact, ethical preference, low risk returns, liquidity, and Sharia compliance returns.
From the perspective of the investor again, so we've seen, a lot of investment has gone into, or a lot of work has gone into building the framework for Sukuk. A lot of work has gone in terms of, say, the regulators, the exchanges, even the advisors, such as ourselves, in bringing products to market. Now, after that has been done, after a lot has been done, how exactly do investors interact with these instruments? What are the motivations for interacting with these instruments? We have found that in addition to Shariah-compliant, a broad category of investors are attracted to Sukuk in particular for various reasons. Some people like it because of the ability for diversification. Retail investors in particular seem to like it because of the amount of social impact that it can have by being linked to infrastructure, just because of the type of Sukuk that we brought to market so far in Nigeria. That social impact has been very well emphasized and has a very strong appeal to retail investors and has encouraged them to participate in this market. And I think understanding the rationales of investors is critical, because we can structure products, but if we don't take everything into consideration, the whole bucket of considerations, you may not achieve a desirable level of capital formation, which is required to achieve all the things that we're saying in the non-interest capital market master plan. Because at the end of the day, you have the products, but the products need to bring people into market. So it has to be embedded with all the considerations that people have for these kind of instruments. We've seen things like the level of risk that is in the Sukuk, as one of the drivers for investment. We've seen things around the liquidity and our need to ensure that we have listing of products, rules for listing of products, the CBN giving liquidity status for this product, just to enhance the issuance. Okay, so it's not just about the issuance being structured in a particular way. For the likes of pension funds, for instance, as far back as 2017, it was critical that the National Pension Commission included in the wording of regulation that Sukuk was an allowable instrument for PFAs, right? It was important that the wording spelling, exchange traded funds or non-interest exchange traded funds was explicit, by regulators, because these are very rigid regulatory environments. So for us as practitioners, while considering Sharia compliance of products, we must make sure that we consider broader objectives of you, the investor. So I think I would like you to take it away that the products that we're presenting to you, or the products that the market is coming up with, are not just only compliant in nature, but they are designed to meet multiple needs. And there's so many things. If we look at what is possible with Sukuk in particular from the infrastructure perspective, we only scratched the surface of what Sukuk can do. I'm giving an example here of just how far Sukuk has gone in building real estate in countries such as Dubai. Right? And some of us might have visited places like this, and you'd be amazed that financing was mobilized for such astounding developments, in various places. And you'd also be amazed that financing from Sukuk has been used for very impactful social endeavors. In the case of now, COVID and the likes, it's important to note that Sukuk has been used for things like vaccination, right? So whilst we're building products, we need to target them in such a way that the appeal will be even stronger and participation will be much, much deeper.
For mutual funds, he observed that code investments in Nigeria are growing rapidly. Sharia-compliant mutual funds are currently 9 in number, including 3 launched within the last 12 months. He noted that investors have access to expert management and the assurance of Sharia-compliant investing.
I'd like to speak to one way of how this capital formation can be formed. So people can go on and invest in equities. They can go on and invest in Sukuk. But not everybody can start picking both Sukuk or equities or commodities or whatnot. They might need to invest via a pooled investment scheme. Okay? And these pooled investment schemes in Nigeria have started growing quite rapidly. In the graph that you'll see on my screen, you'd see that we were growing quite modestly up until 2019. In 2020, right, we had a massive increase in the value or the amount of assets that were accumulated in pooled investment schemes. Now, these are pooled investment schemes that are registered by the SEC as non-interest, right? We're looking at about 35 billion in terms of asset side as at the end of 2020. Now, into this year, we're well ahead of 40 billion. Now, why is this? Now, it is because there are investors that want to come into the market on any given day where they may not have access to a particular Sukuk or equity. They might not have the skill set to pick any of these investments, not know when to enter or exit the market, and they're looking for expert management. And so because of that, they come in through pooled investment schemes. They may want a fixed income fund, they may want a balanced fund, they may want an equity fund, they may want to invest in real estate, right? But they want to do this through a vehicle, a registered vehicle, a proper vehicle. And so what we've done is to make sure that we have products that cut across all these type of asset classes or investment preferences. We have a mixed fund, we have a fixed income fund, an equity fund. We've advised on the real estate investment fund, and things like this. So this is another way that investors can engage in the market. Okay, so I think in terms of all the things that are possible, investors need to understand that these products are quite robust. They can access them in the market. They're available in the market. There is room for the creation of additional products, definitely, in the likes of Sukuk, money market funds, even more companies being listed, infrastructure funds, private equity funds, more mutual funds. We can't have a market with few players. We need more players to come into the market. So there's more choice and more selection for investors such as yourselves, right? And then obviously the likes of alternative assets that can provide good inflation hedging, good risk management strategies, such as commodities that we've already spoken about.
Indexing in principle seeks to match the risk and return of the overall market on the theory that over the long term, the market will outperform any stock picker. In Nigeria, the Lotus Islamic Index was created in 2009 and the index was officially launched in collaboration with the NSCE in 2012. The index tracks the performance of a basket of selected Shariah-compliant equities listed on the NSCE. Total market capitalization of Shariah-compliant stocks stands at 11.3 trillion naira. This is a clear example of how ethical investors can access the equities market to make informed investment decisions through the provision of Shariah-compliant equities that can help to boost liquidity in the Nigerian capital market. And that brings us to the end of today's session. Visit ProShareNG.com website to read more on Islamic finance. Click on Web TV Banking channel to watch the Islamic Finance Weekly videos. You can also follow us on our social media platform displaying on the screen. Many thanks for watching. See you next week Friday for another episode of the Islamic Finance Weekly.